Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video we have some Mythic Plus news and updates. I'm a little late on some of this, and then the rest of it comes out on the next reset. So we had some hot fixes deployed yesterday. It might have even been 2 days ago actually. But either way, we had some hot fixes deployed that changed a lot how Mythic Plus works as far as the keystone levels at which things unlock and everything like that. So we'll go through the hot fixes and we'll also talk about the changes that'll be coming on Tuesday on the reset. So first thing here is rune crests are now awarded up to Mythic plus 7. So rune crests are like the heroic level quests, heroic raid level quests, and you can get these up to level 7 now. And this is basically just changing it. It used to be 8, right? So it's just it kind of nerfed rune crests technically, but not really, because you can just do 6s or something and get them, right? You can do it easier. But this is just to highlight the change. Gilded crests are now awarded beginning at Mythic 8. So before, to get the Gilded crests, you had to do 9s. 9s were pretty manageable, to be honest. But 10s are where it starts to get really difficult, especially for pugs. And so only having like this, like one keystone level to farm, to farm your Gilded crests on really reliably as a pug, let's say, was not very great design in my opinion. And then also because you're already doing a 9, you're like, well, I'd rather just do a 10 because then I get 10 credit in my weekly vault. But the 10s have such a low success rate. Also, 9s don't have great success rate as pugs either, and therefore you're only getting like 5 gilded. 8s are a lot more manageable. And while I get their intent is to make Gilded not be infinitely farmable in Mythic Plus, I think what they've been trying to do with this in this expansion so far is make raiding more important, because that's like this main staple of the game. Like Mythic Plus is a main staple for a lot of players, don't get me wrong, but just for the game in general, like the Race to World First has great viewership compared to like the MDI or something for a reason. And so they're trying to do that, but I don't think it was necessarily the right way. I think they could have accomplished a similar thing by just giving more Gilded crests from Mythic bosses, in my opinion. Like if you're joining a 20-man team and raiding Mythic, or even if you're pugging it, whatever, it's very difficult to just get 20 people together to do a Mythic raid and just have the Mythic bosses drop 20, 25, whatever amount of crests, right? If you're doing Mythic bosses, you should be able to upgrade a piece of gear every week, like max upgrade it, right? Like it shouldn't be such a penalty. Mythic Raiders shouldn't have to farm. In this case, like a Mythic Raider shouldn't have to go in and farm plus 9s over and over again just to upgrade the gear that they got from the Mythic Raid. That is where the disconnect is. It wasn't about needing the Mythic Plus to be like dramatically harder, which it's fine that it's a little bit harder in my opinion, to get the very highest end gear. But like reward the people actually doing the raids. If you want to make the raids more relevant, reward the raiders. That's my stance on this. Because they've said this in interviews, right? Their goal is they're trying to like balance it out so Mythic Plus isn't the best way to get all the gear, right? Okay, well then reward raiding. That's kind of the simple solution there. Next up, we have increased the duration of buffs on the bargains, Zalteth bargains. So these were only 20-second buffs, and now they're 30 seconds. This is a huge buff. It's actually very, very good. This is a great change. The buff was very short. It was too short, really, in my opinion. And so 30 seconds is a lot better. Zalteth's Guile. So this is the plus 12 affix. So where they get rid of the affixes, they nerfed the modifier from 20% to 10%, making 12s a lot more doable. So probably most keys on 12s can be done now, whereas before, like, it was very, very hard to do a 12, and a lot of people would only do 12s on certain dungeons, and a lot of people were just stuck at 11s. And this is going to make this a lot more possible, and it should be hopefully will be a lot better. I don't push keys like to super high levels, but people who do seem to be pretty happy about this change. Then there's a few more. We'll stick to the Mythic Plus affixes. We'll stick with these next 3 here. Dawnbreaker resolved the issue causing pre-visual for Dark Orb on a noob to scale with player size. Yeah. So that's just a bug fix. Dodgeball no longer damaged the illusions in Mist Eterna Scythe. So on the little fairy boss, The dodgeball, the arrow mechanic, you could actually hit the ads in the intermission with those. So you could technically all line up and aim your ball at the ad to help kill it really fast. It's kind of a cool thing, actually. But I guess since it only really helps super organized groups, maybe that's why they got rid of it, because it doesn't really help their average Mythic Pluser, because nobody's going to do that perfectly like that. And then, of course, if they get, they're more likely to get hit by it, and they just get one shot by the 5 balls hitting them. But anyways, I'm fine with this fix, but it was kind of a cool little thing. This will also get like abused to some extent as well. They could have decreased the damage done or something. There's other ways to handle it, but overall, I'm fine with it. Siege of Borealis resolved an issue allowing Chopper Red Hook to be pulled by spells such as Halo and Starfall. So that was just, big AoE spells pulling. So, and you don't want that to happen. So therefore, it can no longer happen. And so that's just a good change there. So obviously the big news on these hotfixes is that these are already live. I think I already said that, but these are already live as I'm making this video. And it's just basically you can get Gilded Crests easier now on +8. That's like the biggest change. They buffed the buff that you get from Zalatath Bargains, and they nerfed the Guile thing on +12s. So overall, this is just buffs to players, convenience to players, pretty much all around good for players. Unless you just really wanted it to be super hard, in which case it's like, well, now it's slightly less hard. And so if you're in that camp, then I can see that. And then we have some other things coming on the maintenance. As you can see, October 15th here. We have some other changes coming. This one's really big. This is one of the hardest dungeons to pug, in my opinion. So these gatekeepers, they have this Wrath of Zolramis. Periodic damage has been reduced by 25%, which is a lot. These are like I think these are, I'm not the master of all the dungeons, but I'm pretty sure these are the mobs at the beginning of Necrotic Wake that nobody pulls. Makes these more doable at least. Skeletal Monstrosity enemy forces contributions increased by 20%. So that's just more contributions from them, because I believe those are probably like the big mobs. Curian weapons, the effects of javelins no longer stack. So on Search and Stitch Flesh, which is the next thing, you pretty much have to stack all your javelins on him to kill him fast enough. But they tried to make up for that with these nerfs. So they've already nerfed this once, but they've nerfed it again here. Surge and Stitch Flesh's health reduced by 20%. That's pretty big. And then Stitch Flesh's creation, festering rot damage reduced by 30%. So as long as you have only one up now, one of the festering or the creations up, it should be easily healable by any decent healer with this 30% nerf. And then when there's 2 of them out, like a really good healer can heal through it. But, the average healer is probably still not going to be able to. Stonevault had some changes as well coming. Skarmarak, so that's the guy who drops, the dungeon drops, so it drops one of the ret trinkets. Skarmarak's health has been reduced by 10%. This is big. This is a boss people struggle with for sure. Skarmarak's now stunned for 4 seconds instead of 2 after you break his shell. And his crystalline eruption damage is reduced by 15%, so that's just unavoidable damage, I believe. And then the final boss in Stonevault, Void Speaker's health has been reduced by 10%. I never have any problem with this boss personally, but this will just make the fight a little bit quicker. And it increases the cooldown of Entropic Reckoning, so he won't do that quite as often as what he currently does. Because it increased the cooldown of that, which is good too. So just nerfs there. So nerf to Stonevault, 2 of the bosses. Nerfs to Necrotic Wake, mostly Surge and Stitch Flesh. But also, if you were putting all your javelins into it, that's technically a nerf to that, which is a nerf to players. So, mostly good things here. Just getting rid of the Curian weapons I think would be fine too, and then tuning the bosses around that. But mostly big, great changes for the players, mostly W's, all that kind of stuff here. So obviously the biggest thing is going to be if you were struggling with 9s and 10s, you can now get your Gildeds on 8. If you're somebody who aspires to get Gilded, but it's like, man, I can't do a 9 or 10. Now maybe you think you can do an 8, so maybe you could get Gilded now. So these are generally good wins. And of course, now you're also buffed by doing the Zalatath Bargains as well. So that will make the dungeons easier and faster if you do these affixes correctly. So some pretty good changes all around. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about it. I was a little bit too busy to do a video on it last night. Usually I'm pretty busy on my raid night, so it has to be pretty big news for me to be able to sneak out a video there. So yeah, that'll be it for this one, guys. really good changes overall. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, I encourage you to check out the Patreon. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.